A Science of Change, podcasting by Gilmore Crosby, social scientist, author, and organization development professional since 1984. This is Gil Crosby with you again, and this is yet another AI-generated podcast conversation, this time about my 2021 book, Spirituality and Emotional Intelligence. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're really getting into something fascinating. We're exploring how ancient wisdom and our modern grasp of emotions are not just parallel paths. They're actually deeply intertwined. We've got some great sources lined up that really highlight this connection. You know, that ancient Persian saying, this too shall pass.
Mm-hmm.
It's simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's so much packed in there. It's got the spiritual depth, accepting impermanence, but also real emotional intelligence. It gives you perspective.
Right. That acceptance is key.
Yeah. And Stephen Levine told this story about a monk. Someone asked about life's fragility, and the monk just drops a cup. It breaks. And he immediately says, of course.
Just like that.
And Gilmore Crosby, one of our main sources, mentions his own dad reacting the same way when his grandkids broke something. Of course. Oh, good. Now we got to see how that cup ended its life, because everything eventually ends.
It's about seeing that natural cycle, isn't it? Accepting what is without unnecessary drama.
Exactly. So our mission here today is to unpack some of this wisdom from spiritual traditions and show you how it connects directly to boosting your emotional intelligence, your EQ. And this isn't just, for CEOs or something.
No, absolutely.
It's really for anyone who wants more clarity, more presence, more effectiveness in just, living.
And I think it's really crucial we emphasize this up front. This isn't a religious deep dive, not in the sectarian sense.
Good point.
We're looking at EQ rooted in universal spiritual ideas. We're drawing wisdom that can resonate, whether you're an atheist, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Native American, Christian, it doesn't matter.
The wisdom is universal.
Precisely. And we're not trying to invent some new buzzword or to slap a new label on spiritual intelligence. I mean, there are good efforts out there already, like SQ21, and we respect that work.
Right.
What we're introducing here is what the author terms Crosby-style EQ. And the main requirement, it's actually pretty simple, an open mind. Because this approach rejects dogmatism. And that means any kind of dogmatism, religious, sure, but also like rigid atheistic dogma too.
Interesting.
Because dogma itself, that emotional clinging to one idea and rejecting all others, well, that's just not an emotionally intelligent way to operate, is it?
That makes total sense. Mm. And, what really jumps out is how long people have been trying to figure out emotions.
Oh, for millennia.
Take the Tibetan Buddhist perspective. They've been studying this stuff systematically for over 1,000 years.
Incredible consistency.
Yeah. And Daniel Goleman, the guy who really brought EQ into the mainstream West, he actually worked with Buddhist scholars, even the Dalai Lama, for his book, Destructive Emotions. You wanted to learn from them.
Makes sense. Go to the source.
And their definition of a destructive emotion is really quite striking.
It is.
They say it's any emotional state that distorts our perception of reality.
Think about that for a second.
Right. Sort of flips things around. They argue that even opposites, like really strong attachment, that intense honeymoon feeling or fierce loyalty and strong aversion or dislike, they actually do something similar.
How so?
They both create this gap, this distortion between the way things appear and the way things are.
Ah, okay.
So from their view, intense love or infatuation can twist reality just as much as hate can. Hate makes you see only differences, while infatuation might blind you to crucial differences until, the glow wears off.
So it's less about good or bad emotions.
And more about clarity. Does this feeling help you see clearly, or does it cloud your vision? So how does this ancient idea connect with modern science? What does that look like?
Well, it's fascinating because this is where you see a real convergence between, say, Buddhist practice and science. They both emphasize the value of detachment.
Okay, but detachment can sound a bit cold, maybe?
Yeah.
Unfeeling. How do we square that?
That's a really common reaction, yeah. It's a fair question.
Is it about not feeling things?
No, not at all. That's the misconception. It's more about creating a little bit of conscious space.
Space between what?
Between the feeling itself and your immediate, maybe habitual reaction to that feeling. Think of it like watching clouds drift by. You see them, you acknowledge they're there.
But you're not swept away by them.
Exactly. That pause, that space, that's where your cognitive mind kicks in. That's where choice lives. So that detachment lets your thinking brain engage. It helps you actually notice and even appreciate your own feelings and others' feelings too. And crucially, it helps you manage your reactivity.
We all have those knee-jerk reactions.
Right, absolutely. So becoming a bit more objective, less sort of yanked around by the immediate pull of an emotion, it allows you to feel your feelings without being trapped into acting on them in the same old ways.
So it's a paradox then. Being detached lets you feel more.
Precisely. You can experience them more fully, more consciously, when you start seeing emotions not as these dangerous things to be bottled up or denied.
Which many of us are taught to do.
Right. But instead, see them as clues. Information from your inner guidance system. It's incredibly freeing. You know, emotion is a form of physical energy. Trying to fight your own feelings takes a huge amount of energy.
Exhausting.
Totally. Instead, think of intense emotions like a check engine light on your dashboard. It's an alert. What's this feeling trying to signal? Maybe something about your boundaries, your values, or maybe a situation needs attention.
It's your body's wisdom talking.
Exactly, your innate wisdom. And allowing that natural ebb and flow of emotion, letting feelings come and go, is just vital for physical health, emotional health, and ultimately for self-acceptance.
And that idea, self-acceptance, is just articulated so beautifully by the Christian mystic Thomas Merton.
Oh, Merton's wonderful in this.
He wrote, "Finally, I'm coming to the conclusion that my highest ambition is to be what I already am." Powerful start.
Mm-hmm.
That I will never fulfill my obligation to surpass myself unless I first accept myself. And if I accept myself fully in the right way, I will already have surpassed myself. For it is the unaccepted self that stands in my way, and will continue to do so as long as it is not accepted.
Yeah.
When it is accepted, it is my own stepping stone to what is above me.
That's quite something, the unaccepted self standing in the way.
What an invitation. Right.
Yeah.
Stop fighting yourself. Just accept the emotional reality of yourself. And in doing that, you sort of cleanse the lens of perception, as William Blake might say.
Yeah.
And that's how you find the next stepping stone for growth.
Yeah.
It's this radical self-acceptance that's both, well, deeply spiritual and highly emotionally intelligent.
There really are two sides of the same coin.
Which is the core idea we keep coming back to from our sources.
And to build on that, Christina Puchalski, she directs the George Washington Institute for Spirituality and Health. She defines spirituality really broadly.
How does she put it?
She says it's the aspect of humanity that refers to the way individuals seek and express meaning and purpose and the way they experience their connectedness. Connectedness to the moment, to self, to others, to nature, and to the significant or sacred. Now, think about EQ. What does emotional intelligence ask of us?
Well, being present, right?
Yeah.
Aware of the moment.
Exactly. Fully present to the moment. EQ asks us to appreciate ourselves, understand ourselves, and appreciate our relationships, connect with others.
All about connection and awareness.
Right. And think about it, regardless of specific beliefs, isn't a calm, loving presence almost universally seen as a spiritual way of being?
Yeah, absolutely.
So most spiritual traditions, implicitly at least, are calling for emotional intelligence. The link is just undeniable when you look closely.
Okay, so with that connection firmly established, let's get into the specific framework we mentioned earlier,
Sure.
The foundational theory.
Right, the Crosby-style EQ.
Kurt Lewin, the social psychologist, famously said, "There is nothing so practical as a good theory."
Love that quote.
And Ellen Watts, the philosopher, pointed out that theory really means vision. Without vision, we flounder. So this Crosby-style EQ is presented as a unique vision, a practical theory.
And at its heart.
It's defined pretty simply. Using your cognitive mind, your thinking brain, to be aware of your emotions and the emotions of others. The author developed this through years of work in organization development.
Practical application.
Always helping people see and shift the emotional dynamics in relationships, groups, whole organizations. You need an integrated approach for that.
And this specific approach, Crosby style, is named as a tribute, actually, to the author's father, Robert P. Crosby. He was a United Methodist minister.
Okay.
And what makes it distinct is this relentless focus on action research on yourself.
Action research on yourself. What does that mean exactly?
It means it's not just about reading concepts in a book. It's about treating your own life and relationships as a sort of laboratory. You continuously experiment with your own behavior in real situations. You observe the results, what happens when I do X instead of Y, and then you refine your approach based on what actually works.
Like a personal scientist for your own interactions.
Yeah. Exactly. It's a rigorous applied behavioral science method. It stems from Kurt Lewin's original action research ideas. Robert Crosby encountered this back in 1953 through tea groups.
Tea groups.
Yeah, they were these intense small group experiences designed for people to learn about their behavior and impact through real-time feedback. Pretty cutting-edge stuff back then.
Sounds intense.
It could be. But he adapted these methods, brilliantly used them in church camps and corporate settings and graduate programs. He basically helped thousands raise their EQ by teaching them how to experiment on themselves, essentially.
Wow.
And this approach pulls from lots of places. John Wallen's interpersonal gap model is key. That helps you understand the gap between what you intend and how others perceive you.
Oh, that gap causes so many problems.
Isn't it just? It also draws heavily on family systems theory, people like Virginia Satter, Murray Bowen, Edwin Friedman, and insights from neuroscience, too. So it's really integrated.
So taking all that in, what does this really mean for you listening right now, for your work, your life?
Well, think back to Daniel Goleman popularizing EQ in '95.
Right, his big bestseller.
His core assertion was huge. EQ, not IQ, is the critical factor for success, especially in careers.
And he had data, right.
Oh, yeah. In his follow-up, working with emotional intelligence, he found EQ accounted for something like 67%, two-thirds, of the abilities needed for superior performance.
Two-thirds.
And it mattered twice as much as technical skills or IQ.
Twice as much. That's huge. And here's the really empowering part for you, I think. Your IQ. It's more or less fixed. You use what you've got, but you can't really boost it significantly.
Pretty much set.
But your EQ, that's different. Wherever you are right now, with intention, with some guidance, you can significantly enrich your emotional intelligence. You can grow it. And doing that, well, it really enriches your soul, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It opens up so much.
It's kind of ironic, though. Society tends to put IQ on this pedestal, while we often try to manage emotions through, like, denial or suppression, which is actually a fear-based, irrational approach. It blinds us to that inner guidance system you mentioned.
Exactly. We cut ourselves off from vital information.
So to be truly rational about emotions, you actually need to use your cognitive brain, your thinking mind, to pay attention to their messages.
Listen to what they're telling you.
Yeah. Even look at Einstein, obviously a genius intellect, but also known for his playfulness, that playful, curious, engaged mind. That's an important EQ ingredient, too. It unleashes creativity.
It really does.
So, bottom line, both science and spiritual traditions seem to agree. Growing your emotional maturity through awareness leads to more success, sure, but also more happiness, more fulfillment. Which brings us neatly to the Crosby EQ hierarchy. And where does it start? The absolute foundation.
Where else could it start?
Self-awareness. You have to start with yourself. Gandhi put it perfectly. Be the change that you wish to see in the world.
Can't skip that step.
If you don't understand yourself, your patterns, your triggers, your inner world, how can you possibly hope to truly understand others or develop the skills to navigate relationships effectively? It starts right here with you. Think about those words from the Gospel of Luke. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye?
Ooh, hits hard, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
Because what's our default mode in tense situations? So often is to immediately focus on what the other person did wrong.
Right.
To blame them.
Almost automatic.
But the truly empowering choice, the EQ choice, is to turn the focus inward. Not just on your opinions about them, but on your contribution. What did I do that maybe escalated things? What can I do right now to bring the temperature down?
Taking responsibility for your part.
Yes. And that instantly lowers the tension inside you. And often, it has a calming effect on the other person, too. So the very first practical step when you notice yourself getting heated.
Calm yourself down first.
Some form of self-calming. Maybe it's mindful breathing. Maybe it's deliberately trying to tune in to the other person's perspective. Really listen.
And this issue of blame, it's ancient, as the sources point out. Look at Genesis chapter 3.
Adam and Eve.
Yep. Adam blames Eve. Eve blames the serpent. Nobody takes ownership.
Passing the buck from the very beginning.
Pretty much. Edwin Friedman, the family systems therapist, even playfully suggested that blame itself was the real original sin. Not eating the fruit, but the response afterwards, the blaming.
Huh. That's provocative.
It makes you think, though, because if you genuinely believe the problem is 100% out there with the other person,
then the power to change it is also out there.
Exactly. You've just made yourself powerless. You're waiting for someone else to fix it. Which connects to another saying attributed to Jesus in Mark's Gospel. Nothing outside a person can defile them by going into them. Rather, it is what comes out of a person that defiles them.
So the source of the problem is internal.
Generally speaking, in terms of our reactions and contributions, yes. Now, obviously, we need a massive caveat here.
Absolutely.
In extreme, genuinely dangerous situations, think of a Jewish person facing the Nazis or someone experiencing domestic violence. EQ means recognizing the danger, respecting your fear, and prioritizing physical safety above all else. Fleeing is the intelligent response. We are absolutely not blaming victims for external oppression or abuse.
Crucial distinction.
Very. But look at Gandhi again. He was confronting the massive external power of the British Empire. Clearly, much of the problem was external.
Undeniably.
Yet he still chose to focus on embodying the change he wanted to see, starting with himself and his followers. And that self-work, that internal shift, created the agency for a massive external movement. It's about finding your locus of control, your power to act, even amidst external challenges.
And there's another analogy here that really reframes how we think about difficulties in your relationships. This one's from Thich Nhat Hanh, the Zen master.
Oh, wonderful teacher. The lettuce analogy.
That's the one. He said, if your lettuce isn't growing well, you don't blame the lettuce. Right.
Tickles softly. No, you wouldn't.
You check the conditions.
Sure.
Does it need different soil, more water, less sun? You never blame the lettuce.
You look at the system, the environment.
Exactly. He says, similarly, with friends or family, when there's trouble, our first instinct is often blame. But he advises, no blame, no reasoning, no argument, just understanding.
Just understand.
If you can understand the conditions, understand the other person, and show that understanding, then you can approach it with love, and the situation has a chance to change. Because at the end of the day, you have far more influence over yourself than over anyone else.
That's just a fact.
And you can increase that self-influence through this action research on yourself idea. Maybe you notice a habit like you always get defensive when you feel criticized.
Okay.
So you decide to experiment. Next time it happens, you consciously try something different, pause, breathe, ask a clarifying question instead of jumping to defend.
A non-habitual response.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Then you watch what happens. You learn from that little experiment. That skill, identifying your own patterns, is critical because it opens the door to trying new behaviors.
It gives you options.
Yeah. The author points out this super common dysfunctional pattern. In most non-life-threatening relationship conflicts, both people focus entirely on what the other person needs to change.
The blame game, I guess.
Right. And if both people are doing that, the pattern just locks in. It goes on forever. And just leaving the relationship, whether it's a job or a marriage, often doesn't fix it.
Because you take the pattern with you.
You take you with you. You'll likely just recreate it in the next situation. It leads to that powerful insight from family systems therapist Tim Weber.
What did he say?
The work of the self is not dependent on the response of the other. Wow. So let's try and wrap this up. As we bring this deep dive to a close, what does this all mean for you?
Yeah, what's the takeaway?
Well, we've seen just how deeply connected spirituality and emotional intelligence are. They really inform and enrich each other like two sides of one coin.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully you've grasped some practical ideas here, how focusing on your own awareness, embracing that healthy detachment we talked about, and understanding your emotional responses can genuinely transform your relationships, your work, your effectiveness.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with, something to mull over. Building on Merton's idea, accepting yourself to surpass yourself, and that core concept that change starts within.
Okay.
Consider this. If that unaccepted self is what stands in your way, and if, as Tim Weber said, the work of the self is not dependent on the response of the other, then what unexamined emotional habit, what pattern inside you might be the very next stepping stone Merton talked about, the key to the deeper understanding or freedom you're looking for. And what if simply accepting that habit, not judging it, not fighting it, but just seeing it as information, what if that was the most profoundly spiritual and the most emotionally intelligent thing you could do right now?
Hey, I appreciate you listening. This, again, is Gil Crosby. And I want you to take advantage of what's available to you. I have many free materials. I am happy to talk to people about their situations, especially if you're trying to create change, either social change or organization change. We have frequent workshops that are available, T group workshops. If you have never been in a T group with us, then don't miss it in your life. It's many people have said to me, of all the trainings I've ever received, I got this one 30 years ago, and it's the only one that stuck with me. You're learning from your actual interactions with the other participants and with the faculty. The faculty are walking the same talk that they're teaching of behavioral skills. It's a training workshop. That's what the T stands for. This is done in the spirit of the creation of T groups by Kurt Lewin and his associates. It's for groups. It's for teams. That's how it was originally designed. It is a opportunity to learn about theory and put it directly into practice. Again, the original design, you learn things and then you put them into practice. It was not just all ambiguity, which is how some T groups, most are led today, where the faculty hardly says anything. That's not how this is designed. So join us for that. There's always workshops. There's the Leadership Institute of Seattle, a 2-year program where you will learn from T groups and learn how to do all the organization development work that my father designed, most of it, and I continue that practice alongside my brother Chris and many other associates. So don't be a stranger. There's a lot going on. It's always changing. So be in touch, and it's on the website, crosbyod.com. I look forward to working with you in your organization or as you pursue things like reducing gun violence and decreasing racism in our society. Whatever your goals are, the social science of Kurt Lewin guides how to achieve those goals in a reliable way. And so that's what I apply and practice every day. And I invite you to do the same. Together, we can create high productivity and morale in organizations. We can create stronger foundations for democracy. We can create a better world.